Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We want to summarize the whole hadith issues here, just in points. Okay, that's not everything about hadith, but that's the basic, point, bullet by bullet criticism of hadith. Okay, just so we know, is it really a part of the Islamic religion or is not part of the Islamic religion? That's all, right? We have Quran; it's protected from the beginning of time till the end of time. The problem that we're talking about, and there's no debate between Muslims or not, or even non-Muslims, that Quran has changed. Quran never changed. God promised it's not going to change, and it will never change. And Quran, as we talked before, is full of a full prescription for your life, right? As far as Hadith, we're going to talk quickly, bullet points. I hope we finish very quickly. 50 bullet points about Hadith. For first thing, the question number one: is Quran complete? Is Quran complete? As somebody who believes in Hadith, you have to say there's no answer for you but to say no. Quran is not complete, right? You have to say that with your mouth, and that's blasphemy. Because if Quran is complete, so why do we need Hadith? We don't need Hadith. Well, you have to say Quran is complete. Quran says about itself, it is complete. It says تفسيرا لكل شيء وتفصيلا لكل شيء وتبيانا لكل شيء, meaning it is an explanation for everything. Okay, so you're not going to wiggle out of this. Number two, what is the science of Hadith? Science of Hadith, we confess, we give you that. Science of Hadith is a huge advance over the sciences of religions, especially at the time of other religions, of Christianity and Judaism and other religions in that era. The science of Hadith is a huge advance over them. There's no comparison between science of Hadith and the science of the Bible, right, at the time. Why? Until now, for example, we don't know who wrote the Bible, who wrote the Gospels, for example. It's all speculation. The Gospel according to John, that's actually for example, the Gospel according to John is actually a name we put for it. There was no title for that, manuscript that was written. We thought it could be somebody named John wrote it, and we wrote Gospel according to John. We don't know if there's John the disciple or another John. There was no last names then. The Gospel according to Mark, we don't know who even Mark is. We have a suggestion that it could be Mark that was following Paul, but maybe not. I don't know. Nobody knows, and he didn't sign it, Mark. Right? So all of these things compared to Hadith, that you actually, from you can go narration 6 generations from, and it's so delicate, it's so accurate when it says, حدثنا or سمعنا or just قال, meaning it says the Prophet told us, is different for them, the scientists of Hadith, than the Prophet said. If it said that the Prophet said, that means he didn't hear it himself. That narrator did not hear it himself. So that hadith takes a little bit a lower level. So imagine there's a huge science there. I don't know what to say about the people who made this science. Maybe thank him or not thank him. I don't know. But they did a great effort, and scientifically, it's actually, it's better than what was there at the time. But that doesn't mean anything about authenticity. The fact that you're comparing something, to something extremely unauthentic, right? That doesn't mean that thing is authentic. You're comparing hadith to the Bible and the Torah, who authenticity is completely in doubt, right? And saying, oh, see, it's much better than those. Okay, yeah, it's much better, but doesn't mean that it's authentic. And if there was no Quran, I would have said, yeah, well, what can we do? I mean, the best we can get is that. But there is Quran, and God said He's gonna preserve it for us, and He did, and He will, and it's a challenge. Quran is preserved till the end of time, right? So it will never change. So that means Hadith is not necessary. Okay, but I just want to say that in the beginning, The fact that Hadith science is better than any other science of any other religion. Okay. Number three, what are we talking about here? What's the magnitude of the problem? The Quran is about 6,234 verses, I think, or roughly around that number. Hadith, we're talking about the Bukhari, that's one book, 7,500. Muslim, 7,500. Abu Dawood, 5,200. At-Tirmidhi, 3,900. An-Nasa'i, 5,700. Ibn Majah, 4,300. Ad-Darmi, 3,500. Malik, 1,700. Ahmad, 27,600. 27,600. Ibn Khuzaymah, 3,000. Ibn Habban, 7,400. Al-Mustadrak, 8,800. Al-Bayhaqi, 21,800. That's only in the Sunni tradition. In the Shia tradition, they have three books. In the Ibadi, one book. In all of the other sects, each one has his own book of Hadith, but they have one Quran, just so you know. So in total, there is about 108,000 Hadith versus 6,000 verses in Quran. That's almost like 1 in 10 or more. 1 in 20 maybe, or something like this. It's really, really embarrassing. Okay, now. Okay, so what is hadith? What does Muslims say about hadith? Hadith is everything that the Prophet did, said, or uh, saw and didn't say anything about. They do, yeah, like everything, really, like that's a lot of things. Okay, now the Prophet lived 40 years before he became a prophet in Mecca. There's like one hadith or something about that era where so the Prophet actually after he became a prophet and started talking to people and people, as you said, started saying that everything he says is wahy. He didn't tell them anything about his life before becoming a prophet. He didn't say anything. Right? There's only one uh, narration about something before. Uh, it's not even a strong hadith. Anyway, so that's that. Um, now, after he became a prophet, now, okay, so he's saying Quran, but at the same time he's doing everything in life and talking to people and so everything is documented or should be documented, right? There's 13 years in Mecca, and you know how many hadith in the Mecca era? Less than 200 hadith, less than, and that's with squeezing all the books, squeezing all the books, including the I mean the Isra and Mi'raj, which it's claimed that the Prophet had gone to heaven or lifted up to heaven and came back. He at the time he was sleeping in the bed next to his wife Khadija. You know who narrated this incident? His wife Aisha, which who he married more than 15 years later. Okay, and according to the horrible traditions that they say that they talk about, that she was not even born at the time when he had the elevation um, to the heavens. So it's impossible. It's impossible that this is actually um, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, and why would 13 years in the beginning of Islam, where the Prophet is saying so many things, and there's so many opponents in Mecca, and there's so many things happening, interesting things happening, and none of that is documented, just 200 hadith versus 108,000 hadith for later. Okay, I would even venture to say that the first 5 or 6 years in the presence of Prophet in Medina, hadith was also very scarce, not as scarce as the Meccan era, but the concentration of hadith all come from the last 3 years of the Prophet's life. Okay, now uh, let's say, for example, Khadija versus Aisha. This comparison by itself shows you that hadith is not revelation. Definitely is not a revelation, because if it is revelation, the woman or the wife that lived with him for 25 years should have narrated a good number of hadith about him. She's the mother of his 5 kids, right? She actually witnessed the start of the whole thing, and she knows him before the start of the whole thing. So there's a lot of information that we can get from her. Why didn't she tell us anything? Right? She didn't tell any hadith. I think it was maybe or maybe one or two, something like this. Right? But Aisha, who was his wife that he married, 15 years later, she narrated or said to have narrated. She said to have narrated 1,500 hadith. See the difference? This is unbelievable. Okay, number five. Okay, so the Prophet was saying Quran. He's, the revelation is coming to him, and he's saying Quran, Quran, and people are writing Quran, and he's ordering people to write Quran on anything they find, a paper, a stone, anything, you know, and collecting the Quran, including, the parchments and stuff like that. Okay, and everyone had Quran in his house in different material, and everybody memorized Quran in their chest, in their heart, because Muslims pray with Quran. You have to say Quran as well, and also Quran is very revered at the time, and it was revered and revealed at the time in pieces, right? So it was easy for them to start memorizing them. But despite all of this, the Prophet actually assigned the people that called Hafazat al-Quran, al-Qurra, which is Qurra meaning the people who memorize Quran. And their only job is to memorize Quran. So they'll be like the standard bearers. Okay, there were about 70 of them or so. Okay, and other people who are responsible to write, because maybe he says something today and it happened that nobody had a pen to write, or a material to write on. No, he has people assigned to that. So if none of the regular Muslims write it, these people will write it. Okay. Now, so that's for Quran. Also, it is said from Hadith. By the way, I can actually take evidence from Hadith because I'm against it. Nobody, no, Hadith people cannot take evidence from Hadith against me because I don't believe in it. So, like for example, when you talk to Christians, you talk to them about, you give them evidence from the Bible, but they cannot give me evidence from the Bible against what I'm saying. I can't give him evidence from Quran. It doesn't make any sense. So same thing. So there is um, hadith and about the Prophet and all this, that it says that he was reviewing Quran with Jibril, the angel Jibril. Whatever it was revealed of Quran was actually reviewed by the Prophet with angel Jibril in every year in Ramadan. Okay, and the last year it was reviewed twice, right? And then not only that, um, one of the Zayd ibn Haritha, who was one of the important memorizers of Quran. He was also summoned by the Prophet in the last Ramadan to actually recite the whole thing for the Prophet, to make sure that he doesn't have any problems or any mistakes. Right? We're talking about 500 page of material, 6,000 and something verses that are memorized by people. That's amazing, right? So anyway, so he has a lot of, you know, efforts that he made intentionally to protect Quran, right? Because that's his message, or the message of God that went through him, right? But when it comes to Hadith, we find in Hadith, in the body of Hadith saying, Hadith means saying, Hadith saying that um, لا تكتبوا عني الحديث ومن كتبه فليمحو, meaning that's Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, that's the one who narrated this hadith, right? That hadith says that don't write hadith. Couldn't believe it. Don't write anything that I say except Quran. That's what hadith. That's what this narration is. Don't write anything that I say except Quran, and whoever writes, erase it. Okay, so there's two folds to this. Number one, he's saying to you, don't write it. That means he doesn't really care about it that much. If he did, he would have told you, write it, right? Okay, so that's on the surface. If you look deeper, he even said, whoever wrote it, whoever wrote it, he didn't say separate it, put it aside so it doesn't, mix with Quran or anything like that. He said, erase it. So if you're saying that Hadith is a revelation like Quran, that means the Prophet didn't do his job, right? That means the Prophet didn't do his job. That is a problem, okay? And we know from the verse in Quran, the famous verse that says that وإن تقول علينا أقاويل لأخذنا منه باليمين ولقطعنا منه الوتين. Meaning that if see how God intentionally talk about His beloved Prophet in Quran, just to show us that who's God and who's human, right? He's saying to us, if the Prophet, this Prophet Muhammad, says anything about us, about the God that that we that is wrong, that we'll take him from his right hand and we'll cut his neck. That's almost humiliating. Because God said in that hypothetical that the Prophet said something, lying, a lie about God. Okay, so you're telling me that God gave the Prophet two revelations, and we'll know soon it's actually three, two revelations, and he one of them he was so keen about keeping it, and the other one he was just he didn't care. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, another hadith in Tirmidhi. Somebody asked the Prophet to write his khutbah, meaning the Jum'ah speech, and the Prophet said no, do not. He did not give him permission to even write the khutbah. Okay, now in Musnad Ahmad, right, one of the huge books of hadith, Abu Huraira, which is one of the also the largest, the one with the largest number of narrations. It's said that he says that when the Prophet heard that they write uh, some sayings that the Prophet had said, he said to them, he came out of his house and he said, أَكِتَابٌ غَيْرَ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ, meaning a book other than the book of God. Like, he was shocked that some people are doing this. One of them was Abu Huraira, by the way. So Abu Huraira said, so we collected what we wrote in one place and we set it on fire. Imagine that. So if those hadiths that were burnt were not preserved, that means who's responsible for loss of revelation? The Prophet? You want to say that? I don't think so. Imagine if I send you uh, a messenger. I send you a messenger, and I tell you this is the message that you have to give to these people, and you can't change a letter of it, one letter. You have to memorize it, letter and everything. And after you tell him this message, tell him whatever you want to tell him. So he tells them whatever he wants to tell them, and before they write it, they say, "Don't write what I told you. Don't write whatever I told you." That means he. That means that other things that he was saying is also a message or revelation. It's not. So then, of course, these people are not gonna. The traditionalists are not. They're not gonna. Uh, you know, they're not gonna just stay silent. They have to find hadith, if you know what I mean, that says otherwise. So they have this hadith of Ibn Amr, Ibn al-As, Ibn Amr, famous hadith narrator. He was a young boy when the Prophet died, but it doesn't matter. We'll talk about that later. And he narrated that the Prophet said, um, you know, uh, write whatever you want to write about me. Imagine that. That's weird. Because the Prophet in the other hadith said, don't write anything, and in fact, imhi, erase it. Here he said, write whatever you want to write. This is a schizophrenic prophet, it looks like. Hasha, right? So, so of course, I looked at that hadith, and it's not, we can bring that later. Is that this hadith actually, the chain of narration is interrupted. Two people never lived at the same era, so there is a gap. So this hadith is a hadith da'if, meaning is a weak hadith. Okay, the same narrator in Albani, another book of hadith, says this. There's signs of the judgment day, right? Signs of the judgment day, the end of the universe. And he mentioned few signs, and then one of the signs, and ويقرأ بالقوم المثنى ليس فيهم أحد ينكرها. المثنى is the Mishnah. The Mishnah, the Jews knows the Mishnah. The Mishnah is another book of the Jews that was written after the Torah, which collects opinions of scholars, other stories of other prophets, other opinions, other rules and regulations, stuff like that. And actually, the Mishnah and the Talmuds and all of this, they actually became bigger than the Torah, similar to Hadith. The Torah is 5 books, the Mishnah is 30 books. And that's why when they put them together, the Old Testament is about 35 books. So you can see that religion is basically the Mishnah religion. It's not the Torah religion. Similarly, people try to do that in Islam. So it's called the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah in Arabic is the Mithna, meaning the second. Mithna means second, number 2, right? The book number 2, which exactly what we say about what? Al-Bukhari. We say, أصح كتاب بعد كتاب Allah, the most authentic book after the book of God, which is basically the Mithna. That's called the Mithna, exactly. But we don't people don't really think deeply. It's so troubling, actually, that Al-Bukhari is the Mishnah of Islam. Anyway, so he's saying here that usually in Islam, the signs of the end, it means that apocalypse or something like this. That's also another disaster in the tradition, but in general, that means something bad. Saying something bad is that the Mishnah is going to be read to people and nobody's going to feel anything. Yeah, of course. So the same narrator is saying 2 different things. So ignore it. All right. So when did we write Quran? Just so we know the difference in authenticity. Just so we know. Maybe Quran is not authentic too. But let's see. Quran was written or collected, right? Year 1 after the Prophet died. Year 1 after the Prophet died. Abu Bakr was the Khalifa of Muslims, and there was some civil war, which is Harub al-Ridda, the apostasy wars, which we can talk about, and a lot of people who were memorizers of Quran died in these wars. So Abu Bakr said, we have to collect Quran, otherwise it's going to be lost. He did not say, let's collect Hadith. Let's get, because also may be lost, because the people who memorize Hadith may have died, right? Or the Quran people died only and Hadith people survived. Doesn't make any sense, right? And then look at so that one year after, look at the uh, the conditions, or the conditions that had to be fulfilled in order for one verse to be written in Quran. That was, final version, or the final, not version, but to collect them in that book, right? The Quran, there has to be a written form of that verse, and there has to be 2 people that to agree or attest that this version or this particular way of writing the verse is exactly how they heard it and how they memorized it. So 2 witnesses and a written document. There's nothing better than that, right? If you look at that, that's actually so good. And you know why the Quran is called Mus'haf? It's called Mus'haf because it was actually written in the time of the Prophet. There was no people. There was no. They didn't rewrite Quran. Quran in Abu Bakr era was not rewritten in a different book. You know what I mean? Like they didn't get like empty pages and start writing Quran on it. No, all that they did, they collected the material that everybody had at their homes and everything, and put them all together in a like a binder type thing. Not obviously, what is the binder at that time, right? That's why they called mushaf. It's formed of sahaf. It's formed of of different pages or different uh, materials together, bound together. That's why it's called mushaf, right? Okay. And then after that, we know what happened to Quran. Quran after that it was kept by the next Khalifa Umar ibn al-Khattab, and then in the time of Khalifa Osman ibn Affan, the third Khalifa, he actually decided to, because the Islamic Empire was expanding all over the place and non-Arabs were getting into Islam and stuff like that. He actually decided to send the Quran, the copy, start not first time back now copying the actual original copy, copying that and actually sending it to different countries, right? Egypt and Iraq and Iran and all these countries, right? Now, recently we found out that the Prophet himself collected Quran in that binder that we were talking about, or in whatever that, you know, pages above each other that we are talking about. And that is the Quran of Birmingham, the Birmingham Quran or the Birmingham Mus'haf. This is old, the oldest Quran discovered ever. And when they put the carbon dating on it, they found that is actually the date is 568 to 645. The Prophet was born 570, so 568 to 645, which means that it's the middle exactly of this era is a couple of years before the Prophet died. The middle of that range is exactly a couple of years before the Prophet died. The Prophet died in the year 633. There's only 12 years in that range beyond the Prophet death, which basically 2 years Abu Bakr and 10 years Umar, first and second Khalifa. So this range extends from 2 years before the Prophet was born to the end of the era of the second Khalifa, which means what? It means that this probably was a Quran that was touched by the blessed hands of the Prophet. And this is amazing. All right. So next, um, the verse that says, well, everybody says uh, that ولا ينطق عن الهوى. Most people who try to just blindly defend tradition and hadith and all this, just blindly like this, they say, Quran said, ولا ينطق عن الهوى. Okay, meaning the Prophet, the Quran in Surah Al-Najm says the Prophet doesn't say anything from his own um, liking or from his own, head. Everything comes from God. It's a revelation from God. Okay, so they're saying that means hadith is a revelation. That is not true, because if you look at the chapter that this verse came in, this chapter was revealed number 18, which is 5 years after the prophet was a prophet in Mecca. At that time, there was not a single hadith. We can't even trace a single hadith to that era, or a single narrator that narrated from that era. There was no hadith. The question that God was talking to was saying these verses to combat the infidels, uh, assertions or doubts or whatever, and they or arguments, and he was saying to them that he doesn't say anything from his head. This is all revelation from God. He means Quran. There was no hadith then. The question was not about hadith. Do you think the idol worshippers were actually, they believed that Quran is from God, and they were arguing with the Prophet about hadith? So then the God said hadith is actually the, of course not. God was talking about Quran at the time. So don't tell me that this is an evidence that hadith is a revelation. Okay? And then it says, Quran says, "Inna anzalna dhikr, inna nahnu anzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafizun." Meaning, we revealed al-dhikr, which is translated Quran, mm, and we will protect it forever. Don't worry about it. Okay? And that's the promise from God. That's the biggest miracle of Islam, how preserved the text is, and how miraculous, obviously, the text is. So the traditionalists say, no, when it says al-dhikr, it means Quran and Hadith. Of course not. Because by definition, I'm going to ask you the question. All right, Quran is protected? Yes. Hadith is protected? No. Hadith is not protected. Everybody knows, even the people who believe in Hadith, Hadith is not protected. Hadith is very different. But, the only difference between us and them is that we don't, because of that difference, we don't believe in it, right? But they believe in it and say, okay, we'll accept some differences, accept, and we'll classify it and all of these things. But everybody agrees that hadith is different, is not protected. So that verse cannot mean both hadith and Quran, because otherwise the God will be lying, right? Also, the word al-dhikr meaning something that is memorized. Dhikr, yatadhakkar, memory. Is hadith memorized? Nobody memorized hadith. Even the people who believe in hadith, even the staunch, defenders of hadith, they don't remember hadith. It's impossible to memorize it as a body, as a whole. But Quran, everybody, like, there's a lot of people that memorize it in the world. Millions of people memorize Quran from A to Z. Hadith, even is not required to be mentioned. Quran, when you say something in Quran, you have to say the verse, 100%. You can't make one mistake in one word, right? But Hadith, you could say whatever you want. You can just say the meaning. You don't have to say the whole word by word. So this verse also, it means Quran. It doesn't mean Hadith. Now, the verse that says, which is the last verse that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad. It was revealed in the last pilgrimage that he's done to Mecca, and that pilgrimage is called Hajjat al-Wada'. And in that pilgrimage, the Prophet said that, or God said in Quran, اليوم أتممت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Meaning, today I completed your religion and completed my favor to you, and accepted Islam as your religion. Okay? After this verse, there's no other verses. Okay? That's the last verse, not in Quran, but in Revelation. So after this verse, the Prophet lived for a year. During that year, there's a lot of hadith that are mentioned. There's tons of hadith. Even in the last week of his life, people mentioned hadith. Last 6 months, they mentioned hadith also. A lot of hadith and a lot of things. So what? So that means these hadiths are not revelation. Because if God said, "I completed your religion," what kind of God is it? Like he's joking with us? Did he complete the religion or not? Complete the religion and then do another revelation to your prophet? So then it becomes addition to the religion? Of course not. So all I want to know now, of course they don't know because nobody knows, what are the hadiths that were revealed or said to have been narrated from the last year of the Prophet's life, so we can just erase them. right? Okay. And just number 13. I'm forgetting the numbers, but number 13. eh, just so you know, so we're all in agreement. When I say I don't believe in Hadith, I believe in Sunnah. Sunnah is different than Hadith. Sunnah meaning the traditions of the Prophet, and the traditions of the Prophet typically are traditions that he's done, like things that he's done himself, not said, done. And these were transmitted over the years via thousands, millions, and billions of people. For example, the way he prays. So we did not. My father did not have me read Hadith to find out how to pray, because even if you read Hadith, you're not going to find exactly how to pray, right? He did not. We did not read Hadith to find out that Asr and Dhuhr and all of these different prayers are four rak'ah versus two rak'ah versus three rak'ah. We don't know. In fact, the only hadith, the best hadith that is written, the most complete hadith about that's written about that, the narrator said, and I forgot what he told me about Maghrib. Imagine that. In hadith, he says, الصبح 2 ركعة, الظهر 2 ركعة, العصر 4 ركعة. And then when it came to Maghrib, he said, I forgot what he said about Maghrib, and Isha is 4 rakah. I can't believe that people even believe in books like this. And anyway, the point I want to make here that we believe in Sunnah. We believe the way the Prophet pilgrimed. So that's how we pilgrim this way. We believe that the way the percentage the Prophet took for zakah, for alms, right? All of these things, and it's been narrated by thousands of people. They, so I know there's no difference. If you look at the people praying, there's small differences that actually come from hadith. But if you just follow the tradition, there's small differences, and it really doesn't matter. You put your hand like this or you put it next to you. It doesn't matter. But the prayer is exactly the same, right? And that's because it's sunnah, not hadith. Okay. Now, if you tell me, and if I know for sure that the Prophet said, stand on your hand, walk on your hands, not on your feet, then I will stand on my hand. So it's not the matter that we, obviously there's a huge debate. There's some people who are like really extreme on that side. They say even if the Prophet said that we should not do it because the Prophet a um, is not God. He doesn't make religion. He just tells us what the religion is, and the religion is in Quran. No, but I'm not. I don't believe in that. I believe that the Prophet was chosen by God, right? And he is the best person that walked this earth. So whatever he did, I'm gonna do, even if it's not religion, or even if it's not the original revelation, because he's not gonna deviate from the original revelation. But if he did this, then it must be good, and I will listen to him, right? But I need to know if he said that or if he's done that. We don't know. Hadith is narrated by one person telling another person telling another person. That's it. Most of the hadiths are had anyway. It's not like Sunnah that we're talking about. And you know who actually, so it's just so you know where I'm coming from. It's not we're on disobeying the Prophet, right? We just don't know that the Prophet said that. And in fact, we're doubting that the Prophet would say something like this. Okay, but you know, why do we even go so far? The the Prophet's friend and the first Muslim, right? Abu Bakr. When they told him, the Prophet said, your friend says that he actually was taken from his bed and he sent to Jerusalem and fil Isra. Okay, what do you say about that? Right? They're thinking that you know what he said? He said, "In قالها فأنا أصدقه." He didn't say us. I believe that, because why would he believe that? Nobody should believe that. All that he said, "In قالها." If he said that, then I believe him. So even though he lives in the same town, he's his friend, you can call him on the phone and say, well, did you really say that? No, he said, if he says that, then I believe him. And that's exactly what I would say too. Okay? So prove to me that he said it, I believe it. Okay? Um, we talked about number 15 لا ينطق how we talked about 16 نقطع منه الوتين. Number 17 in the Quran, really the Birmingham Quran. Number 18 we talked about the way the Quran was written. Now let's talk about number 19. Number 19, now the Quran is collected first year of the Abu Bakr's era, which is 2 years. Then okay, the next year بقى, maybe you should collect hadith بقى, the second revelation, finish your job بقى. And it's so fresh in people's mind and stuff like that. No, he didn't collect hadith. You know what he said? He said, "Can everybody give me his hadith, please? The ones, everything that was written other than Quran, please." So they collected the pieces for him. It came out to be 450 hadiths. Okay, just remember this number, huh? How that number flourished in the future. 450 hadiths. You know what he did with them? He burnt them. He burned the hadith. Okay, Abu Bakr, please. This is the second revelation, and the Prophet is dead already. You can't go back to him and ask him. You burn the second revelation? Like, what came to you to have you burn the second revelation? How about this? Keep it in a safe. Keep it, store it in another place. If you don't want it to mix with Quran, I don't know how it's gonna mix with Quran. This Quran is already collected. But anyway, whatever you guys say, whatever, you keep it on the side. Keep it in Aisha's room. Keep it in Hafsa's room. Keep it in whatever room, and just reveal it when it needs to be revealed. No, he burned it. That means he really hates it. He hates it. And maybe we should نقطع الوتين, نقطع رقبته بقى ولا حاجة. Kill him. Maybe God should kill him then. And then, okay, now Abu Bakr is dead. Really, it's getting hairy now. We're gonna lose the revelation now, guys. We're gonna lose the revelation. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna have to collect the revelation, the second revelation. No, we did not collect the second revelation. Omar said, collect hadith for me, and he spent the whole night thinking about it. It came out to be 650 hadith or 600 hadith, something like this. And you know what he did with them? He burned them. He burned the hadith. And not only that, when Abu Bakr burned the hadith, he said, in your books, in the traditionalist books, he said, إنكم تحدثون عن رسول الله أحاديث تختلفون فيها فلا تحدثوا عن رسول الله فمن سألكم فقولوا بيننا وبينكم كتاب الله استحلوا حلاله وحرموا حرامه. Meaning, you're being asked about you're saying to the Muslims after the Prophet died, you're saying a lot of things about the Prophet that you're actually differing among yourselves. Don't say anything about the prophets, and if somebody asks you, just say, between us and you is the Quran. That's the final arbiter. We will acknowledge the right, the lawful, and do it, and get away from the unlawful things in Quran and not do it. That's it. So basically, Abu Bakr is Qurani. He's Qurani. He must be Qurani, right? Umar ibn al-Khattab, second Khalifa, after he burned Quran, he said, Hasbuna al-Quran. He said, Hasbuna al-Quran. Meaning what? We only have Quran. We only revere Quran. Maybe he was Qurani also himself. And you know who else said Hasbuna al-Quran? Trivia question. Aisha, which is the wife of the Prophet and the daughter of Abu Bakr, the first Khalif. She said the same. Hasbuna al-Quran. I don't know. So I want to be like Omar. I want to just, I want to go wherever Omar is going to go. I want to burn hadith like Omar has burned hadith. And, you know, hopefully I'll be at the same place at the day of judgment as Omar. Come on. Moreover, Omar did something really, really, really suspect here. Come on, Omar. This is too much. You took the second revelation that people collected and spent money and effort to do it, and then you burnt it, right? And you said a weird statement, and that the only thing we have is Quran. And then, after all of this, you actually beat Abu Huraira. You beat the guy who says hadith about the Prophet in masjid, in the masjid, in the mosque. You beat him up because he says things about the Prophet. No, come on. That's really sad. That's really, I mean, God will just punish him, right? Of course, at the end of the day, Abu Huraira won and Umar lost. He prevented him from saying anything about the Prophet during the whole 10 years of his uh, time. Uthman ibn Affan prevented him also from saying anything which is the third Khalifa in the mosque. And the only time Abu Huraira starts to flourish and says the things that he said, 4,900 hadith, something like this, close to 5,000 hadith. Unbelievable. Like the guy was basically like with the Prophet in his bed listening to hadith, right? And the Prophet had nothing to do in life. He didn't eat or drink or fight or walk or read Quran or pray or anything. He was just saying to Abu Hurairah alone hadith. That's the only thing what the Prophet was doing. That's crazy, obviously. So Abu Hurairah flourished when after Uthman there was a huge civil war, and the legitimate Khalifa Ali ibn Abi Talib was being fought by Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan in the Levant, in Syria, and and Abu Huraira joined who? Joined Muawiyah, of course, and he said whatever hadith he wants to say. I don't know, maybe that's what he's done. I don't know. I can't tell for sure, radiallahu anhu, Abu Huraira, but maybe he was said about him. You know, who knows? Who knows what happened? But all I know is that that's when hadith flourished, right? But I want to ask one thing. Abu Huraira, it is said that he was actually seeking Ka'b al-Ahbar. Ka'b al-Ahbar is one of the Jewish scholars who actually embraced Islam from Yemen. Abu Huraira was actually seeking him to find and take knowledge from him. And a lot of people said there's actually hadith that says that Abu Huraira mixes hadith between what Ka'b is telling him as myths and stories and hadith. He mixes between both of them. Maybe he got demented at the end. I don't know. But uh, he both of them were prevented from talking in the about the Prophet in the mosque, and they kept the hadith inside them um, until hmm, after Uthman. So basically, during the Prophet time, forget about the Prophet time. 2 years after of Abu Bakr, 10 years of Umar, that's 12, and 12 years of Uthman, that's 24. They kept the hadith inside themselves for 24 years. They were not saying all over the place like they're saying, and then suddenly they are able to memorize or remember all of that hadith, and you know it is said they were have places in the mosque that they just keep telling people stories basically the whole time in Damascus, right? That's really weird. Okay, now let's talk about Abu Huraira for a second. I really don't know if Abu Huraira said 5,000 hadith or Aisha said 1,500 hadith. So let's see who's the most hadith. Abu Huraira 5,000, Ibn Abbas about 2,000, Aisha 1,500. Jabir ibn Abdullah about 1,000. Um, who else? Sa'id ibn Khudray 500 or 700 or something. And who else? Ibn Omar also about 2,000. So, these are huge amount of hadith, right? The Bukhari, all of the Bukhari is 6,000 hadith. All Quran is 6,000 ayah verse. So how did these people come up with all of this hadith? Really weird. So let's see actually each one of them. What was he and where was he, at the time? So for example, Abu Huraira was a young guy. He was 25 years old when the Prophet died. He arrived in Medina and actually embraced Islam from Yemen. He came from Yemen and arrived in Medina 3 years before the Prophet died. Just 3 years before the Prophet died. During these 3 years, it is said that the latter part of the 3 years, he was actually sent to Al Bahrain, all the way to the east, to collect taxes, the zakah, right? So he spent in Medina about 1.5 years with the Prophet. During this 1.5 years, how did he come up with 5,000 hadith? I don't know. Okay, do we know anything else about the Abu Hurairah? Yes, we know. He said about himself in hadith that he was a bum. He was a beggar in the street. He was extremely poor. He lived there's nothing wrong about that, obviously. He lived in a mosque next to the Prophet. That was his house. Um, and he would go around in the street begging for food. And he said to the point that I actually was, you know, using Quran to eat. So you knocks on some Muslim guy's house, and he says, "Did you hear the new verse in Quran that the Prophet read to us today?" And then he goes in and tell him the verse, so it becomes a conversation. Then he has to sit, and Arabs are usually very generous, so they start eating and drinking, or they offer him food and drink. He said that about himself. He also was known to be Abu Huraira. The name Abu Huraira is not actually his name; that's his like nickname. Abu Huraira means that he is the guy with the cat. He has a cat or a kitten in his clothes, like on his shoulder. Like he's always running around with him, running away, and like he always walk around with this cat. That's why they call him Abu Huraira. So you can just imagine the picture. Somebody, you know, a beggar in the street walking around with a cat, and he spends his day trying to find food to eat. And he somehow narrated 5,000 hadiths from the Prophet. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being poor. Maybe he's the most pious man in the history of earth. But I wouldn't imagine that Abu Huraira was sitting next to the Prophet. Like the Prophet is here, Abu Huraira is next to him, then Omar, Abu Bakr, Uthman, Ali. I don't think so. I think just by just friendship even, Abu Bakr was probably next to the Prophet in sittings, gatherings. Omar next to him on the other side, and all of these things. There's a million people and Abu Huraira may be the last one over there, or somewhere. Nobody's gonna. So I, it's really very difficult to understand how he heard all of the hadith and nobody else heard anything else, right? Who's Ibn Abbas? Ibn Abbas is the cousin of the Prophet, who was not Muslim for all of his time. When the Prophet died, Ibn Abbas was 12 years old. 12 years old. And the Prophet conquered Mecca 2 years before he died. And there was Al Abbas and Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas, that guy was 10 years old when the Prophet actually went to Mecca, conquered Mecca, and he and his father embraced Islam then. And then he came with the Prophet to Al Medina. He spent 2 years with the Prophet between the age of 10 and 12 and narrated 2,000 hadith. Amazing, right? So we're taking our religion from kids. Next is Ibn Umar. Ibn Umar also was young at the age of when the Prophet died. 15, 16, something like this. Next is Aisha. Aisha, I believe that we have a lot of people research that she was 17 years old when she married the Prophet, and that means that when the Prophet died, she was 25 years old. So that's reasonable, and she was his wife, so may be able to narrate about him. Uh, but you believe, the traditionalists believe that when she married the Prophet, she was 9 years old. And when the Prophet died, she was 17 years old. So you are taking your religion from kids, right? And who else? Or any others, small amounts. The point I want to make, I really, really, it's more plausible to me that Abu Huraira never said 5,000 hadiths, and the others never said 2,000, and Aisha never said 1,500, and all of those things. Because if you compare those, the huge amount of hadiths of these people, as I said, somebody lives with the Prophet for 15 years, that's what he gets. Abu Bakr, who is the friend of the Prophet before he becomes Prophet, so he lived with the Prophet, what? Maybe he knows the Prophet for 40 years? 40 years. And he was the first Muslim? Huh? There's 30 hadiths narrated about him. Only 30 hadiths that it's said that he said. Omar, same thing. Ali, same number. Uthman, same number. All of the friends of the Prophet that were very close to him, they never mentioned, they never read any, narrated anything of significance. So that doesn't make any sense. But that makes me feel that when the hadith was written, which 250 years later, right? People, if somebody wants to lie, he's not gonna lie about Abu Bakr, because Abu Bakr's words probably were heard by so many people. So if they say Abu Bakr said that the Prophet said, a lot of people, he was the Khalifa. He was the governor. He was the ruler. So people were around him all the time. They will say we never heard that, and it will be easy um, to debunk these lies. But if you lie about somebody who is a bum, who nobody actually know where he was during the Prophet's khutbah, or nobody even acknowledged his presence. So yeah, of course, you can lie about that. You can also lie about kids, because where were the kids? Where is Ibn Abbas when the Prophet was talking? I don't know. He was playing somewhere. Huh? And also you can lie about a woman, because okay, the Prophet told me when we were in bed that this happened, or this should have happened. Who's gonna say that he didn't tell you when he was in bed? You know what I mean? So I think that's my theory, that all of these people, radiallahu anhum, they were pious Sahaba, and they never actually said what is said to have been said. Okay, there's somebody called Hammam ibn Munbih, just to prove my point. Hammam ibn Munbih is the husband of Abu Huraira's daughter, and he actually wrote hadith that he says he heard from Abu Huraira. Okay, and this manuscript actually is preserved. We actually have it, and the number of hadiths in that manuscript is about 200, something like that, not 5,000. So it tells me that probably what Abu Huraira said was those 200, and the rest was lied about Abu Huraira. That's my theory, and I think it's right. So anyway, does it bother you to find out that 99% of hadith is had? So had means, so when you talk about hadith, had means that one person, friend of a prophet, told another person, told another person, told another person, until it reached to Al-Bukhari. He wrote the hadith in 250 Hijri, the year 250 after the Prophet. So, you know, uh, that's called hadith ahad, okay? In order for hadith to be mutawatir, meaning, it has multiple sources and it's believable, because it has multiple sources. It's called mutawatir. It's a daraja min darajat al-hadith. As I said, the science of hadith is very good. The problem is it was not very good, but as good as they can have at the time. But the point I want to make, and it's not exact science, obviously, but the point I want to make is that they didn't follow their own rules, you know. Uh, so, so in order for hadith to become mutawatir, it has to be heard by five Sahaba, five different people heard the Prophet saying it. And those five different people, each one of them said it to five or more different people. And then again, five different. So by the time it reaches all the, so it's five to the power of six or something like this. Huh? So there's a lot of narrations, and this hadith can actually, you can actually believe it that the Prophet. I mean, you have to, because it makes sense. The Prophet is here on earth to tell us the message of God. He's not going to go and tell one person. It's impossible that he tells one person. And if he tells one person, then he's going to make sure that he tells the other person the same hadith very quickly, so this way he can spread it. Otherwise, you can't keep it for one person. I mean, think about the era of Sahaba. Let's say the Prophet said we have to uh, look on the right side when we pray, for example, right? Um, you know, this Sahaba that we were doing that or at the time, how did the message spread to them? If he says it only to Abu Hurairah, if he told Abu Hurairah, we have to go in the bathroom using our right foot, enter the bathroom with your right foot. It's a hadith, by the way. If he says that to Abu Hurairah only, how's the Abu Bakr and Umar and Ali and all these things doing what God intended us to do? They're not. So don't tell me, oh, it was a small Medina and everybody knew. Okay, well, if everybody knew, then more people would have narrated it. Same thing. If even if let's say we're becoming less conservative and say, okay, maybe Abu Huraira told the others. Maybe he was like next to the Prophet all the time, so he heard and then told the others so they can spread the knowledge. Not one of them said, I heard from Abu Huraira. Sahabi, not another Sahabi told that he heard from Abu Huraira, so we can complete the chain of narration. It's only Abu Huraira told somebody else who had never seen the Prophet, which is called Tabi'i, and Tabi'i told Tabi'i, another Tabi'i, Tabi'i, and then it progressed that way. It's really very weird, right? And even if there's two or three that heard from the Prophet, uh, you know, um, that's not enough for the scholars of Hadith, not for me. They say that's Hadith Ahad, didn't reach to Tawatur yet. You can't believe it 100%, right? And then, of course, the second generation, that's actually easy. There was establishment of the empire. They were not chased all over the place, and they would actually teach this in like kind of schools in mosques. So Abu Huraira would have students, so he would say that to students. Why did one student only narrate this hadith to the next generation? Doesn't make any sense. So really, and that's what made the scientists of hadith say, or the scholars of hadith say, that this is that hadith al-ahad yufid al-zan, meaning the hadith of ahad, which is the description I gave you, call it the one hadith that comes from one, is actually, or unitary hadith, or something like this. It comes, uh, it only indicate conjecture. It's a conjecture. So it's only, you can't believe it 100%. So they're saying it indicates conjecture, and Quran is saying don't follow conjecture, and they're taking the conjecture and actually imposing it actually on Quran itself and changing the rules in Quran for Hadith. So we really don't know why al-Bukhari wrote his books of Hadith. Did he intend to make them um, religion, part of the religion? Did he intend to make those part of the religion, or did he intend to just write them as history and people can benefit from it, or what exactly his intention? We don't know. So I think we should stop here, and then we'll continue in another time the rest of the, how much is it? 56 points against uh, the proponents of hadith.